episode of Shots on Target with your host, Brad Betts, where we analyze the top matches of the day in the world of football, and we specifically are looking at that goal market. Today is Wednesday, September 4th. In today's episode, we're going to highlight the French League historically, see how they're performing this year, followed by a best bet for tomorrow's Nations League. So without further ado, I'm going to drop straight into it. France last season, 2023 to 2024, hit both teams to score at 55%. And it was 68 and 37 to end the season at 6 and 5. I just want to make sure I'm not on Bluetooth real quick. That delay in the process. The BTTS hit at 55% last year, but to end the season, it finished at 65%. So a really strong finish to the season in France. The over 2.5 hit at just 53%, but it finished at 59. The scoring really kicked up to end the season in France, which is it's something that we want to notate. It doesn't necessarily always start as well, and there's a lot of weird matchups, so we do want to be mindful. But to end this season and in certain streaks, this league can be very streaky. It hit over 1.5 goals last year and 78%. That's almost 8 out of every 10 matches. We'll see almost 2 goals. Big correlation between that 2 and 3 goals. So 2-goal parlays work really well in France. Not as much trying to hit that over 2.5. But this season, let's take a look where we're at. BTTS is hitting 56% and over 2.5 at 56% as well, which are very similar numbers to last season. But it's more about where we are right now, week to week, in how they score. So let's kind of take a holistic dive. The home team scored in 81% versus the away team in 70%. That's very normal figures. The 12 of 27 matches hit 2+ goals on the home team. 11 of 27 hit 2+ goals on the away team. So that means that teams are scoring both home and away, and it's very matchup dependent. 22 of 27 hit the over 1.5 team total. That's very important when you're looking to get 2 goals. You can almost bet that when 2 goals happen, 2 goals from one team are going to happen. So that's very important. Not as many ties like we have seen in some of the other leagues. Only 2 matches this season have seen 2 teams hit 2+ goals in the same match. Both teams to score, let's see, right now, in week 1, it went 4 and 5, and over 2.5 went 4 and 5. 23 goals in total in week 1. So not a good showing straight out of the gate. But also, 5 of those goals came from in the PSG match, and 6 of them came in the Marseille match. So if you eliminate those 2, that's 11 goals out of those 23. I mean, those 2 matches accounted for almost half of the total goals in week 1. So very important to know. Week 2 kicked up a bit, 26 goals. We had another 6 goals in the PSG match. BTTS hit at 3 and 6 and over 2.5 at 3 and 6. So again, not great performances. The goals kicked up and the numbers went down. So you need to know that sometimes there are some matches that will have higher scoring totals, which can inflate that total goal scoring number, which is what we saw in week 2. And then in week 3, they kind of stop playing defense. 37 goals in 9 matches in France. That's a serious number. And it wasn't just France, or it wasn't just PSG and Marseille this time. It was all around the board. BTTS hit 8 and 1, and the over 2.5 hit 8 and 1. We had 1-1-1 and 1-3-0. So that's very, very important to notate that you don't necessarily always want to be on the both teams to score or the over 2.5 as a bet split. Sometimes you can be on it both. It just depends. But let's take a look at some of these teams specifically in France that are performing. We have Strasbourg, who's hit BTTS in 3 of their first 3, over 2.5 in 2 of their first 3. You have Marseille, who's hit BTTS and over 2.5 in 3 of their first 3 matches. You have Rennes, Rennes, who's hit BTTS in 2 of their 3 and over 2.5 in 3 of 3. You have Nice, who's hit BTTS in 3 of 3 and over 2.5 in 2 of 3. Montpellier, 2 and 1, 2 and 1. So again, 2 BTTS and 2 over 2.5 in the first 3. And PSG, they've hit over 2.5 in 3 of their first 3, and they've hit it BTTS in 2 of their first 3. But then you also have some bottom performers. And then PSG also, I want to notate, they've hit over 3.5 goals in all 3 of their matches. So those matches are flying thus far in the season. PSG, honestly, they look better thus far without Kylian Mbappe. They've spread the play style out. They're not as forward thinking. So we do want to watch PSG this season and see how they are getting along with Mbappe. Thus far, it's been pretty well. We have Saint Etienne. Both teams to score in 0 of their first 3. Newly promoted squad struggling. And the over 2.5 hasn't come in, so they haven't given up 3 goals in any of their 3 matches. Very good information to notate. We kind of want to avoid Saint Etienne, even though they were a team last season in League 2 that you can almost count on to see numbers. You also have Lens, Lens, who is BTTS in 1 of 2 and over 2.5 and 0 of 3. That's pretty typical. They're not necessarily a high-scoring team, so they're kind of taking it into this season in a very similar fashion. So if you're betting France, look to those performing teams, and if you're betting the unders, maybe look to those underperforming teams. Now that we've gotten France out of the way, and from a historic perspective, we're still going to monitor, see how they go the next 3 weeks, compare and contrast, see if we can find any correlating trends. We're going to come right back to the Premier League, to the German League, to the French League. We're also going to highlight the Italian League and the Spanish League from a top to bottom to really understand how the world of football is scoring. But without further ado, we're going to jump into what I believe is going to be the best play for tomorrow. And it's in the Nations League. I believe it's Nations League Group A. I'm looking at the match between Serbia and Spain. Spanish football right now is on a tear. Everybody should know that based on how they performed in the Euros. They won it all. Then you look at how they've been performing in their recent fixtures. Outside of that as well, Spain have won 15 of their last 17 matches. Those 2 matches that they didn't win were both friendlies. So not necessarily strongest squads, strongest mentality. The last 13 competitive matches, that means the matches where there have repercussions for how they finish, Spain was 6-0 in their Euro qualifiers, and then they were 7-0 on their way to the Euro Championship this summer, which means they've won 13 straight competitive matches. And during those 13 straight competitive match wins, they've scored 2+ goals in 10 of those 13 matches. But then you're taking on a Serbia squad, so you need to know who they're playing against and how they're faring. Well, Serbia have only won in 4 of their last 14 matches coming into today's slate, and that's Sweden, Cyprus, Lithuania, and Montenegro. Not 4 of the top world squads, so you do expect that Spain should come out here and get a result. Last night, when I was preparing for this slate, the Spain ML was at -160, and I put it out here because I want you to see the line movement book by book, and I want to analyze this with you guys together because this is going to give you a really good indication on how I look at bets, how they're priced, what makes sense, and maybe we can find a little bit of a cheat code with the way that they move lines or the way that they're sorted book by book. Okay, so let's dive into this Spain money line and the over 2.5. I'll talk to you about my best bet at the end, but before, let's look at this right here. Last night, Spain ML, when I took it, was at -160, which gives us a probability close to 60% that this would come in. Well, it's obvious that the book said, it's going to come in at a much greater percentage. Each one of them overnight moved against us by 0.4. And as you can see, they all moved together simultaneously. And that we kind of do want to see that after I take a pick. Typically, you don't see that the night of. You'll see it toward the morning. You'll wake up in the morning, get a great line, and as the morning goes on, it'll creep against you just a little bit. Well, you see -160, -170 over at FanDuel, and the -185 at DK. Little cheat here. When you're looking at these 3 lines on these 3 books, rule of thumb, if DK has the worst line, odds probability says this is a pretty good bet. And if you can get it under that DK amount, you're probably beating some of that probability. So even at minus 160, minus 1, even at that minus 185, which is what MGM woke up to this morning before they moved in an additional 15 cents along with the others to get that minus 40.4, it's really important to, obviously you want to eat this juice, and the minus 185 is pretty ugly. It's around 62, 63%, up to minus 200, which gives you the probability of around 67%. That means 2 out of every 3 matches, Spain wins, and you're right back to square one. No real hurt in your bank account. So, minus 200 is still a good line. However, let's take a look at these over 1.5s, and did they move? How did they fare? Well, MGM didn't have the best team total. They were sitting at minus 160 with their ML, and then they were sitting at minus 130 with their team total. It didn't move that much. It's now at minus 145, where DK went up to that minus 155, and FanDuel's still stuck at that minus 132. So, what are these numbers telling you? Well, there isn't as much line movement in FanDuel, which does cause some concern. You want to see a very equal correlation between those two numbers moving equally overnight, or the books are saying that one has a stronger chance to come in than the other, which is what they're saying with this ML. There's a potential that this game could be a 1-0. Serbia has been very poor on the offensive end. Watching them throughout Euros, they look disjointed. Normally a very attack-heavy squad that has a really great camaraderie between Mitrovic, Tadic, Vlahovic, all these regulars who put the ball in the net might not be playing together as well as they have been in the past, which is causing these goals not to come in on the offensive end, which could, in theory, in this first match, cause Spain to sit in a little bit deeper. So I would rather play this minus 200 ml than I would rather play a minus 132 over 1.5 team total. That's just because of the odds probability. There's a greater chance that the ML could come in than the over 2.5. If over 1.5 team total comes in, it would be very difficult to see the ML not come in. Now, one opportunity you could take advantage of is that -1 Asian total, giving you that push, or the 0.75, which is at minus 175, giving you half your bet as a win, half your bet as a push on that -1. Again, these are very difficult numbers. We don't have a lot to work with, and I was fully prepared to come in with a great minus 160 line until they crushed us. So, we need to watch over the next 12 to 16 hours how these bets move. It looks like if you're going to want the over 1.5 on the team total, you can throw in that ML together because the correlation of those two seem very probable. So that does give you some time to buy to see how this line moves overnight. There's a potential that it comes back down to minus money. If it's minus 190, minus 195, minus anything below minus 200, odds says this is still a great play, given the form that Spain is in. We want to be mindful of any further line movement. It could potentially show us that there's a greater possibility of that over 1.5 team total coming in. So let's pay attention. We're going to be very gentle with these Nations League bets and these World Qualifier bets because these players are still in league play. They're taking a quick break. They don't want to be hurt. They want to get back in running with their team form. They don't want to lose their spot. So let's just be mindful that this is one international break, and in a month and a week we're going to have international break number 2. And then another month, international break number 3. That splits up these leagues into about month to month to month. So you're going to want to know that first week might be soft. Second and 2 ramp up before that third week has tons of scoring. And then we're back to international break again. Lots of information today, different information. We don't have a lot to work with, so we need to look at things from a different perspective today to ramp it up for what's potential tomorrow. Thanks so much, guys, for being here. The regular guys, honestly. Gator fan, Brad Morris, Russell Johnson, Chris Kish, thanks for coming today. Sean Ritchie, I appreciate you guys. There's a lot of stuff, not a lot to talk about, and a lot of line movement still potential to be had, and lineups. Who's going to be playing for these squads? I truly don't know. We could see some soft squads. We could see not as many Serbia attackers. We could see some of those Spanish attackers not in the squad. We'll see, and that will affect the line movement. Again, thanks so much again. Glad we highlighted a couple of these. We're going to look at another holistic club or another holistic league tomorrow, see how they're scoring, and we'll finish the week strong with a few international bets, leading us into another soft weekend before we can start to gear and kick up for next week. Thanks again. Appreciate you guys coming. Hopefully you gathered a little bit of information from this. And again, we're going to come back tomorrow for Shots on Target. Today is episode 8, where we analyze the world of football, top matches of the day. Wednesday. We'll see you guys again on Thursday.